Welcome everyone to this episode of the Holistic Buffet. I would like to welcome my co-host to the show who has a slightly new looking hairstyle, Mr. Steve Ashton, who has decided to go all fabulous and just silver foxy.
Well, do you know what the reason is? Because my hair was going gray anyway, but because of the sunshine here in the UK, it started to go a bit blonde. So I had like three colors in it. So I had a bit of gray, bit of blonde, and it was all kind of mixing in and looked a bit crap. And I thought, do you know what? With my new mantra, with my new outlook on life, I've hit 50. Why not? Let's go all the way, go super trendy. So go super GQ.
You did. I love it. I absolutely love it. It looks fabulous on you. Okay.
So today's entree, of course, is all about diet and nutrition. And as Carrie eloquently said at the beginning, we're not going to go into specific diets, right? We're not going to go into or specific sort of weight loss plans and that kind of stuff. And we will at some point, right? We'll look at different types of weight loss programs and diets and that kind of thing to give you some specific advice. My notion is that most people know, right? I should choose a Twinkie. I should choose a carrot over a Twinkie, right? I think most people know that I should maybe go out for a walk instead of sitting and binge watching stuff on Netflix every day. That's cool to do sometimes, but you might want to get off the couch occasionally. We all know, but there's certain things that stop us doing it. And what we're going to sort of cover today is a little on that, but you know, we're going to cover a lot more, aren't we, Carrie?
Well, I'd like to think that our episode today is more around the psychology than it is the actual plan that you can have over a healthy body and diet and nutrition. And I think that in our culture and society, we're very into categories. That person's fat, that person's thin, you know, putting everybody in a category. And also our mental mindset, the stories that we create in our heads about our bodies. You know, if I can get to this number weight wise, then I will feel this way. Yep. And it's more about getting to a destination because we've told ourselves a story of how we're going to feel if we get there. What we want to do today is we want to dial that all back, right? And we want to focus more on what really matters and the journey. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we bring Dr. Johnny on, I wanted to just cover a few things that stand out to me in my mind. And a couple of things, a couple of tools or a couple of thoughts that I have always chosen to live by when it comes to this type of thing. What I would like to share with everybody first off is if you could spend a minute thinking about what you might be unhappy about or what you might like to change with your body. Could be weight, a specific number, for example. And just spend a minute thinking about what that story is in your mind. If I get to X pounds, then I won't be like I am anymore. And realize that that story that you have written in your mind has probably come from somewhere that might not be completely logical. It could be infused with core beliefs from your past around relationships with food. And really what the focus should be about is how I am going to take care and appreciate my body on a daily basis. And then looking at, if I do those things, how does it make me feel, right? Because weight loss is really no different from having financial responsibilities, right? Or doing a good job within your career. It's all sort of the same. When we are dedicated and putting time into something and having respect for it and grooming it, it makes us feel good. And it usually helps us to achieve more in that area. And your focus on your body, whether it's weight loss or just your health and your journey, needs to not be about a specific destination. And it also needs to not be specifically about what you look like physically on the outside, right? Very rarely do we say, oh, I'm so grateful for my eyes today because I can see everything and I can see in color and in 3D. we look at our eyes and say, God, my eyelids look so droopy today. I'm so tired. Everything is so puffy, right? So it's about taking a different perspective in how you see your body. So that's one of the things that we will talk more about when we have Johnny on the show.
Well, without further ado, let's bring him on. He's incredibly avuncular and a lovely person, and we'll definitely have him on again. Here is Dr. Johnny Bowden. Welcome, Dr. Johnny.
Hey, Dr. Johnny. I did not meet Dr. Johnny first as a doctor. I met him as a friend and a tennis player. We would get together and play tennis here and there. And as Dr. Johnny would regularly kick my ass on the tennis courts, I started learning more about his career, who he was and what he did. And there are many doctors out there. Dr. Johnny has a PhD. He's written many, many books. But the thing that I really enjoy about his work is that you could consider him a friendly industry disruptor.
Could you give us, almost in a nutshell, what is the big cholesterol myth?
That cholesterol causes heart disease.
Okay.
That cholesterol, as you and I know it, and as most people measure it, good and bad cholesterol, is a 1963 test that's as out of date as the flip phone. And that there are modern tests that actually do measure what's going on in the blood that give us valuable information about risk factors. The HDL-LDL test does not, and yet there are millions of people walking around on prescribed drugs based on an obsolete test that doesn't tell us anything. The idea that cholesterol, even when it's correctly measured, is the major risk factor for heart disease is just an obsolete idea. Heart disease is a very complex thing that has multifactorial causes and effects and promoters. And there's one which is way bigger than cholesterol, and it has to do with how we process sugar. And it's called insulin resistance. And I won't go into the biochemistry of it, but it's basically a risk factor that appears 10 years before cholesterol goes up or some of these other things. And doctors don't measure it. They don't know what it is. And it's all about how your body processes carbohydrates. To bring that full circle to your keto diet, for those who don't know what a keto diet is, it's a high-fat diet. And it's a high-fat diet that's therapeutic and helpful because it's carbohydrates that we're having trouble processing. It's carbohydrates that are making us fat, sick, tired, and depressed. It's processed carbohydrates that are giving us chronic disease. So when we take those out of the diet, replace it with good, healthy fat, wonderful things happen metabolically, as you saw on the keto diet. Weight loss is one of them. It's not the only one.
Is there some tie-in then in terms of the way that we are not necessarily biologically designed to consume great numbers of carbohydrates? Is there some connection there in terms of our simple, basic physical chemistry and evolution almost?
I think it's a mistake to talk about carbs in our natural diet in the same sense as we talk about carbs in the diet of 2021.
Okay.
For example, the paleo diet, which is known as a low-carb diet because it doesn't have any cereal, and it doesn't have any bread, and it doesn't have any pasta, and it doesn't have any of those cakes or baked goods or any of that stuff, so they think of it as a low-carb diet. The actual paleo diet, as studied in published research starting in 1985, is about 65% vegetable products or non-animal products and about 35% animal products. The only thing about that 65% carbohydrates is that they did not look like anything like the carbohydrates we're consuming now.
Right.
I was just talking last night about the Bantu in South Africa who eat an 80% carbohydrate diet. But you would not recognize one of those carbohydrates. So it's very important to know that it's not carbohydrates per se that do the damage. It's processed carbohydrates that convert to sugar in a heartbeat, and that includes all the low-fat cereals and all the crappy, healthy, all these brands that you've been told you need to eat for breakfast. They are destroying us metabolically.
Yeah.
And they convert to sugar as fast as if you took a spoonful of sugar off in the diner, where you put it in the old-fashioned diners when they have a little bowl of sugar. You might as well just take that and put it under your tongue as eat a bowl of cereal. They convert, by the time they hit the stomach, they are sugar. That's the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, because our metabolisms are so broken from this diet, there are some people who are so sensitive that even a good healthy carb like a mango is going to drive their blood sugar crazy. It's just their system's on high alert. And they may need to be even more restricted. But for most people, the carbohydrates that the paleo diet people ate way back, bitter little nut things that I call the Johnny Bowden 4 food groups, food you could hunt, fish, gather, or pluck. If it's in one of those groups, and a lot of carbohydrates are in those groups, it's probably really good for you. But if it's on the cereal shelf, or in the bread department, or the pasta, or any of these things that have to go under multiple sets of processing just to get them on the shelf where they can then sit for 5 years without spoiling, that's the stuff that's making us sick.
Especially if it says low fat on the label, right, team?
Well, when it says low fat, you know two things about it. One is it was made with the notion that fat is the dangerous thing in the diet, which is one of the biggest myths that my whole career has been devoted to blasting apart, and we can certainly talk about that. So when it says low fat, it's advertising fat's a bad thing. We've reduced it. Well, what do you think they reduced it by doing? They added more carbohydrates. They added more sugar because foods without fat don't taste very good, and they've made it into metabolic poison. But it's low fat.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Johnny, I don't even know where I got this advice from, but I really try to hold to it, especially when I'm at the market doing my grocery shopping with my daughter. We attempt to do our entire grocery shopping without going down the middle aisles.
I knew it.
So we just stay on the periphery. And if you can stay on the periphery, you're hitting the fruits and the vegetables
and
the meats and really looking at just
100%.
buying the whole foods. I think this is a really good segue. You mentioned that there are myths, that there are diet myths out there. Can you drill down into a few of those for us? You just talked about the myth of cholesterol, not being what creates heart disease. And interestingly enough, when we were doing our episode on stress last month, I did a deep dive into the biology of the body. And it is critically important that our guests here understand that cholesterol is not bad for you. You actually need it. There are hormones in your body that use cholesterol to be produced. You need cholesterol in your body to help your body function and to produce things. And I remember doing that research and thinking, we've just been made to think that it's a bad word. Can you share with us some of the other myths that in all of your years of research you've come across, and the ones that you think would be most important for our listeners to know?
Well, let me just start by expanding on what you just said with cholesterol. Not only is it a precursor to certain hormones, it's what you make your vitamin D from, which about 75% of America has less than even close to optimal levels of. You make your vitamin D from it. You make your sex hormones from it. I don't think it's a coincidence that half of American men are on
Viagra,
erectile dysfunction diseases, and they're also on statin drugs that block the making of a lot of sex hormones. I don't think that's a coincidence. And cholesterol is needed for the brain, for memory, and for thinking. I used to do a demonstration when we had live talks and things like that. Those old commercials about this is your brain on drugs, and then they prick the balloon and it all expands. That's your brain on drugs, and that's what happens. Or the frying pan thing. I would do that with the balloon. So this is your brain on cholesterol. That's your brain on no cholesterol. You're dead.
right?
So it is a vitally important nutrient. And another of the myths about that before we leave it is that dietary cholesterol, i.e. the cholesterol in eggs, makes the slightest bit of difference to blood cholesterol. It never did, except for less than 0.1% of the population has a specific genetic condition. Except for that, for 99.9% of people, you can eat all the cholesterol in the world and it will not make much difference to your blood cholesterol. What happens, since 80% of cholesterol is made in your body, that's how important it is. If you're eating a lot of it, you just make a little bit less because the body needs that baseline amount and it will just adjust. So eating cholesterol never made a whit of difference ever.
Thanks for being with us today. And we're going to let you go so you can go play some tennis.
Oh, Steve, isn't Dr. Johnny great? I could just
awesome.
listen to him all day.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I often do. After he kicks my ass on the tennis court, then we sit down and sip a little bit of water, and he always drops, some sort of a fabulous nugget of information.
Yeah.
But he's such a positive force and always has interesting things to say. I hope you enjoyed listening.
Very much so. And I look forward to meeting him at some point, hopefully. The thing what I like about, of course, the fact that he's, so engaging, great personality, the fact that he brings in the psychology element, right? Because I think it's be remiss not to look back at, a bit like we did in the last episode, to look back at what is fundamentally my relationship with food. If I'm trying to fix something, if I'm trying to fix my diet, nutrition, weight loss, whatever, is that tied up my self-image, which is of course tied up into, my weight and all of that. It's important. Like if I'm trying to fix that, I need to look at some root cause. I need to do some root cause analysis. If I've got a leak, if something's leaking in my kitchen, I'm going to look for where that leak's coming from. Why is that leak happening? I'm going to really look back at the root cause of it and then get that bit fixed.
So I think it's important that reflection is important, right? That reflection of it is understanding, like you would in a marriage or in a parent-child relationship or in a coworker or supervisor to employee relation. It's what is, right? Like thinking through what is my relationship with food. And that's, I think, why we're sharing our stories the way that we are today, because what we are going to do at the end of this episode is ask you to take a few minutes and think about what your relationship with food was like as a child, what sort of influences were imparted, upon you as a child. And then, where are you now?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And
I
it's not just about diet. It's about the psychological relationship with food.
Yeah.
For me now, I don't think, other than tortilla chips, I am an unconscious eater. I think I'm a very conscious eater. And that was a gift that my parents gave by having us sit down at the dinner table. I've also found that eating outside, and I know that that's not possible for you in the dead of winter in England, and it's not possible in many different places. But bringing nature into the consumption of food seems to make it a more present activity for me, right? Because I'm looking at the sky and I'm listening to the birds and I'm paying attention to what I'm eating and, that kind of thing. I don't want to say that I never eat in front of the television, but I rarely eat in front of the television because it turns into an unconscious activity.
Yeah.
And and this is a decision, right, for people to make. I like being a conscious eater.
Yeah.
I like tasting what's going down. And I like at the end of the day, being able to reflect upon how I nourished my body and what I put in it, whether it was good or bad, including the wine, and knowing what I've consumed. I dislike the feeling immensely of lying in bed at the end of the day and realizing that I can't actually make a list of what I put in my mouth.
Yeah.
And when I think about why I don't like it, it's tied to shame. It's tied to me. And I think this is where a lot of weight issues evolve from, is, shame. Shame is the thing that we shall not speak of, right? Shame is, I've treated my body horribly. It is a insurmountable task to get to wherever I need to be, the 50 pounds I need to lose, the whatever it is, to get back into my X size clothes. And the reason that it is not shame for me anymore is because I can say it out loud, right? I can actually say, I don't want to feel shame, and I don't like treating my body that way. Right. So I think that is really important. People who just can't deal with the issue a lot of time, I think, is because it's a shame spiral, right? Yeah. Every day we're repeating the same habits and waking up the next day and telling ourselves that it's just too much to deal with. I also think that you don't enjoy feeling full. And I know that there's different levels of full. I don't like feeling full either. In fact, I try to never feel, I don't like that feeling. I like feeling satiated. I don't like feeling full. And everybody has their own definition of what that means for them. Everybody who has taken the time to think through it has. And the only way that you ever get there, right, to those definitions is by spending time thinking about it, right? Exactly. Doing the reflecting, coming up with where you are right now, and recognizing that whether you are at the weight that you want to be or you have some work to do moving forward, there's always going to be iterative things that we need to do with our diets, right? It's never going to be I mean, as Americans, everything is supposed to be a quick fix, right? And things that are truly transformative never are, right? That's why there isn't just one diet solution or one kind of dental floss for gum health or, one kind of toothpaste. It is something that you have to be consciously committed to every day and try to find motivating factors for why.
Exactly. Look, a huge subject. We are absolutely going to come back to this and look at lots of different areas. The first thing we're going to do, though, is take a look back. We will come back to this subject, talking about different kinds of diets and also exercise. Of course, it's linked. But this week's exercise, we're going to tell you in a moment on our desserts.
So, Steve, for dessert, let's talk about what our exercises are going to be coming off of this episode of healthful eating, diet, and nutrition. What we are going to be asking you to do is similar to what we did in our last episode with a reflection on COVID. We're going to ask you a series of questions, and we're going to ask you to spend a little bit of time taking in and defining an inventory of your relationship with food and how it is today.
So here's just a very brief overview of some of the sections that we're going to be going through.
The key to making any kind of positive change in our lives comes firstly with awareness. And this exercise really focuses on raising awareness of your relationship with food. So firstly, we'll look at your relationship with food growing up. What habits were formed early on in your life? We'll also look at your relationship with food as it stands right now. And then we'll look to the future and imagine what life may be like should you make some small changes with your relationship to diet and nutrition.
So that looks really good. I'm really looking forward to hearing your responses. And again, please do post any feedback, reflections, questions, comments on our community page. And also, we would really love your video testimonials. Again, 10, 20 seconds worth of video of you just saying what you enjoy about Holistic Buffet, what you've learned specifically, or anything specifically you've enjoyed. And you can email that here, stephencareybuffet@gmail.com. Well, that's it for another fantastic episode of Holistic Buffet.
Thank you for joining us today, where we look at a meze for your mind, a banquet for your body, and soup for your soul.
Bye.